it's Mrs. Montgomery here with today's story. Today's story was requested by Lizzie and Lucy in fourth grade. It's a story that I wrote. Some of you know that I'm a writer, and some of you don't know that, but I am an author of a book called Salty. And this is Salty by Jenny Montgomery. That's me. So it's been really exciting for me to write. I am the author. I am not the illustrator of Salty. My illustrator, her name is Sam, and she's really great. We worked hard on trying to come up with a way to make her able to draw the Salty that I had in my imagination, because I'm not a great artist. And she's so wonderful and talented that she was able to create this image from my mind on paper, which is really impressive. She did all the illustrations in watercolor. So she sketched them first and then filled everything in with watercolor paints. She is the illustrator of my second book, which is coming out soon. So I'm really excited about that. It is a Salty sequel. It's a sequel to Salty. And, well, I can tell you guys it's called Salty's Rescue. So I look forward to that, and I'll share it with you guys when it finally comes out. But for today, here is Salty by Jenny Montgomery, me. It was a cool, sunny October morning. The harbor was bustling with fishermen and women getting ready for their day. Bait boxes were being dragged from trucks to the dock, boat motors were being started, and traps were being loaded onto boats. Seagulls zoomed overhead looking for their meals. A young seagull named Salty watched as the other gulls stole fish out of bait boxes and grabbed clams off the sandy shoreline. The noise and excitement of the harbor were just too much for him. It was not the place he wanted to catch a meal. And here's Salty looking on at the other noisy seagulls. He flew past the crowds of people working on the docks and the gulls soaring through the air. A flash of yellow caught his eye. It was the brightest lobster boat he had ever seen. It shined like the sun as it headed out to sea. Quickly, Salty flew off behind it. And there's Salty in the background. He followed at a distance for a while. Once the boat left the harbor behind and entered the deep ocean water, he decided to land on the railing. Now, what do we know about seagulls? We know that they like to steal food, right? And so let's see if the fisherman wants to let Salty land. At first, the fisherman on board shooed Salty away. He didn't need any pesky seagulls trying to steal his bait away for a meal. And bait is the fish that they use to catch lobsters. But Salty didn't want to fly away. He loved the yellow color of the boat, the smell of the fish, and the soft humming of the fisherman as he worked. He circled around a few times before trying to land on the boat again. This time, the fisherman let Salty stay. Salty looked on as the man quickly found his orange and black striped buoys and pulled up his traps. So the buoys mark where the fisherman has left his traps, and every fisherman has their own color, so you only pull up your buoys and you only check your own traps. Salty could tell by the disappointed look on the man's face that he was hoping to catch a lot of lobsters. But each time he pulled up a trap, it came up empty. After hours of pulling up empty traps, the man took out his lunch. He shared his sandwich crust and a few potato chips with Salty. The sad fisherman finished the day exhausted and without a single lobster. Salty watched as the fisherman turned his boat back to the dock. Salty spent the night nearby. Early the next morning, the fisherman found Salty ready and waiting by the yellow boat. This time the man allowed Salty to land on his boat right away, and they rowed off together with the bright early morning sun shining off the water. The man pulled a few empty traps and looked discouraged as he shared half a cinnamon sugar donut with Salty. He pulled a few more, but still no lobsters. Salty knew that the fisherman needed to catch lobsters. Catching lobsters was the fisherman's job. If he couldn't find lobsters, he couldn't make the money he needed to buy food for his family. Salty knew that he wanted to help the man. This man was becoming his friend after all. His bird instincts were telling him where the lobsters were. He just had to find a way to tell the man where he should set his traps to catch them. He tried grabbing and pulling the rope on the fisherman's buoy, but the rope was too heavy for him to pull. Next, he pulled at the man's shirt as he tried to move him in the right direction. The man just shooed him away, thinking Salty was looking for more food. Finally, he picked up an old mussel shell off the stern of the boat. He flew out to where the lobsters were and dropped the shell. Then he began squawking and flapping his wings furiously. The fisherman looked over at Salty. He had no idea what this seagull was doing, but it looked like he was trying to get his attention. The fisherman filled a trap with bait and set it right where Salty had dropped the shell. Salty was pleased. The man was catching on. Salty continued to find lobsters and showed the man where to set his traps. The man followed along in the boat and set his traps everywhere Salty showed him. After all, he had nothing to lose. At the end of the day, the man returned home to his family. Salty was tired and spent the night on the yellow boat. He couldn't wait for the next morning to see if his plan to help the fisherman would work. And here is Salty looking down at all the lobsters in the ocean. And here he is sleeping on the boat. It's kind of hard to see. There he is sleeping. And you can see that he's dreaming that the man is going to catch a lot of lobsters. Let's see. The next day, the fisherman was surprised to find Salty already waiting for him. He thought the seagull looked excited. He quickly steered his boat to where his traps were so he could check them. When he pulled his first trap of the day, he could hardly believe his eyes. For the first time in weeks, it was filled with lobsters. Salty flapped his wings in excitement. His plan had worked. After finding all his traps completely filled with lobsters, the man returned to the harbor. He took out a peanut butter sandwich and gave it all to Salty. His new bird friend deserved a special treat. Thanks to his help, he had finally caught some lobsters he could sell. And here is the lobster trap, also called a lobster pot, filled with lobsters. And there's Salty getting his sandwich. Every day after that, the fisherman and Salty worked as a team. Salty would show the man where to set his traps, and the man would catch plenty of lobsters. Salty was always rewarded with food, and the best reward of all, friendship. And who's that? That's Mrs. Montgomery. There I am. So this is called the About the Author, and this is in a lot of books. And if you want, I'll read it to you. It says, Jenny Montgomery has loved reading, writing, and everything to do with the ocean since she can remember. And that's true. With Salty, she has combined all three of these loves. She grew up the daughter of a lobsterman and was greatly influenced by her childhood in the seaside town of Cohasset. She lives with her wonderful husband, Tyler, that's true, and their two great kids, Ella and Charlie. And most of you know Ella and Charlie, right? And I'll tell you a little something. This story is fiction, and we remember fiction equals fake. So fiction is not true. So this story is not true, obviously, because do we see seagulls wearing clothes? No. But it is based on some real life events. So there is an actual yellow boat in Cohasset Harbor, and the boat is called Dawn Patrol. That boat was owned by my grandfather, and then my brother, and now my dad. And the boat is still there. And this book is dedicated to my brother. My brother actually passed away, but he was a fisherman, and he fished this boat. And he was the only lobsterman I ever knew who actually liked seagulls, because he would make friends with seagulls all the time, and all the other fishermen did not want the seagulls around, right? Because they were kind of pesty. And so some of this is based on real life, even though it's not a true story. And so it's a special book to me, because it reminds me of my family. You guys can write books at home. You can take anything you're interested in or anything that's happened in your life, and you can make your own book. Because if I can do it, you guys can do it too. Now, I will tell you, it took me a long time to write my first book. From start to finish, it took almost 2 years. 2 years! Your books don't have to take that long. But it started with a teeny tiny seed of an idea, and then it grew bigger and bigger and bigger. And then I would write a rough draft, and I would edit, right? Like I'm doing with the fourth graders are writing their own stories in library. And I'll go through and edit for them. And maybe I took pieces out and decided, no, I don't want to put that in. So I changed the story a lot of times over 2 years. And then I had a professional editor edit it for me, somebody who does it just for their job, is to look at people's writing and to make changes and fix it and make it better, and look for spelling errors and punctuation and things like that. So I had someone do that for me. And finally, we moved on to the illustrations, which took a really long time too, because Sam and I had to work together to develop all of the characters and decide on what colors to use and where we wanted the words to be placed. So a lot of work and a lot of love went into this book, and I thank you, Lizzie and Lucy, for requesting it. And I think I will try to scan I have some Salty coloring pages. I do a lot of reading of Salty at different events. I was at the Nantucket Book Festival last summer, and I go to local bookstores, and I do have some coloring pages of Salty from the book that I can probably put on here, and you guys could print them out and maybe color them if you want. And if any of you have any questions or comments, just let me know. If anybody happens to write their own book or wants to draw Salty, I get a lot of kids that like to send me their own version of what they think Salty should look like. So if you make a great Salty drawing, I would love to see that too. And here comes Charlie.
Well, I didn't know you were doing that.
That's all right, Charlie. You want to say hi?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, this is real life, right? We're at home, and here's Charlie. Say hi.
Hi. Sorry, Mom.
That's all right.
I didn't know
you didn't know I was
video.
reading. He didn't know I was doing Story of the Day, but that's okay, because we're all home, right? And Charlie, what do you think? What's your favorite part of being home?
Everything.
Everything? But you miss everybody at school?
I know.
And Ella. And here's Ella. All right, guys.
I'm gonna get blobby face.
Okay. All right, guys. Take care, and I will see you tomorrow. Charlie. All right, guys. I hope you're having fun with your families, and I hope to see some Salties.